Welcome back to 5 Minutes of Theology with Dr. Dan. We're excited to hear more about Philippians 2:12 through 18. What do you have for us today?
Well, I was thinking about the three words. I think it's the part of the passage from 12 to 18 that Daniel didn't really touch on this weekend was the idea about being blameless and innocent and without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation. So he talked about at least mentioned the twisted and crooked generation, this twisted, crooked world that we live in. And he connected those ideas to the not grumbling and complaining. So those ideas, but in the middle of that are these blameless, innocent, and without blemish words. So they're very similar when you see the three Greek words kind of stacked on top of each other. They're very similar. They all start with the same letter, and probably Paul's doing that on purpose to kind of get that alliteration, that at least the sound of those letters together. But they're not really difficult words to understand. The first one is blameless, so it's the idea of being without blame. And the second one is usually translated innocent, but it's the idea of something being unmixed with something that's not pure. So sometimes it's translated pure. So innocent, pure. And then the third one is without blemish. So again, that's not hard to really think about. It's something that doesn't have flaws. And Paul highlights these words that as we are not being grumblers or complainers, that the reason that we're doing that is so that we can be blameless and innocent and without blemish in the middle of this crooked and twisted world. So these words highlight for me the importance of us living a life in front of people who are unbelievers, people who are living their lives for themselves, people who have no reference point in regard to Christ and God. Our responsibility as believers to live out our Christian faith in a way that helps them to see what Christian faith is all about in the way we live our lives.
Love it.
So Jeremy, Daniel mentioned this weekend that you sent a paper.
Your paper for your class.
For my class that you wrote a couple of years ago related to this passage. You've said to me a number of times through the years that this is your favorite passage in Philippians. So tell me why that is. What is it here that really makes you feel that way about Philippians 2?
I love the whole chapter of Philippians 2 because it makes it so practical and so clear. And there's so much encouragement of how we can walk worthy, because he gives us that in 127, our theme verse, to walk worthy of the gospel. But then we see in verses 3 and 4 of chapter 2 this really difficult command to value other people more than yourself, to get rid of all of the selfish ambition in our hearts. And that seems like an impossible task every single day, because we all have bad motives, selfish ambitions, thinking of ourselves first over everything else in our world and in our own lives. But then he goes quickly to say, this is how we do it. We have the mind of Jesus in verses 5 through 11. We have his perfect example to look to. And then this passage this weekend, he gives us this charge, okay, so work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Then there's the encouragement, but God is working in you, that we're not alone in this. And then he says, don't be like the Israelites who grumbled and complained and were doing that constantly. He gives Paul's own example of, hey, I'm pouring myself out. And I'm rejoicing as I'm doing that it's possible to be like Paul, sitting in prison, dark, bad, terrible situation, but he's 4 times in verses 17 and 18, rejoice, 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 that he's pouring himself out. And then we'll look at Timothy and Epaphroditus this week, who also had the same interest of Jesus and Timothy, and who were willing to die for the sake of other people coming to know Jesus and Epaphroditus. So I love it because there's just so many examples of this seems like impossible to live a truly humble life, but Jesus did it. He made a way. He's working in us in verse 13. And now we have Paul, Timothy, Epaphroditus, real practical examples that we can look to and be encouraged by. It's a great chapter. We'll hit those verses 19 to 30 this weekend with Pastor Sam preaching on Palm Sunday. So hope you join us this weekend.